demands of the Brexiteers. But the UK would accept jurisdiction from the European Court of Justice in some areas. Well, the Prime Minister could face opposition from at least 7 Brexiteer cabinet ministers who met at the Foreign Office last night to discuss their tactics. Today's meeting at Chequers is likely to be tense. Ministers were told to surrender their phones as they arrived. Our political correspondent Alex Forsyth has this report.
One by one, the cars pulled up for the showdown. Behind tinted windows, Theresa May's ministers were swept into her country residence. The hope is they can finally reach agreement about their vision for future relations with the EU.
I think at the end of the day, we'll get to an agreement, and I think we'll have an offer to put to our European colleagues, which will do 2 things. It'll deliver on the outcome of the referendum, restore sovereignty of Parliament, end the jurisdiction of the European courts in the United Kingdom, but it'll also offer a deep, enduring partnership on economic matters, on trade, with our European neighbours.
But among those who'll be sitting round this table, there is deep division. Shut away in here for more than 12 hours, they'll thrash out their views, with no phones allowed. The question is whether they can find middle ground. In Westminster, details of what the Prime Minister's proposing have trickled out in recent days. A key part is that the UK would have common rules with the EU for buying and selling goods. That's to keep trade flowing, especially across the Irish border. But Brexiteers have warned that sticking too closely to EU regulation could limit the UK's ability to do trade deals with other countries.
It does sound, is it common rule book or whatever we're hearing? That does seem to cross the line on 2 accounts. One, you're not making your own rules in your own country, you're accepting what the EU tells you, and that the ultimate court would be the European Court of Justice. So I don't actually believe that what's being said is what is actually going to come out of this meeting.
Downing Street says its plan won't restrict trade deals, and some Tories think senior Brexiteers in their party who don't like the Prime Minister's offer should even consider resigning. Many want compromise.
I think everyone on both sides of the argument needs to stop fighting the referendum again. I mean, that applies on both sides, and actually get on to a practical Brexit.
Parliament is piling on the pressure.
It's farcical that it's taken 2 years to get to this point of trying to reach agreement. My message is this: this cannot be just a truce of the Cabinet. This has got to be an agreement in the best interest of the country and capable of being negotiated with the EU.
Any agreement in the UK will need to be negotiated with Brussels, and today a warning.
The single market is our main economic public good. We will now damage it. We will now unravel what we achieved together with the UK.
Plenty of people are watching what happens here. It could determine the country's future and the Prime Minister's political fate. Alex Forsyth, BBC News.
Well, our chief political correspondent Vicky Young is outside Chequers. So, Vicky, an all-day meeting. How likely is it that the Prime Minister can get her cabinet to agree?
Well, Ben, we've talked many times, haven't we, about crunch moments, decisive moments, but it does feel today that Downing Street, the Prime Minister, is going in there. We can see the House behind us, determined to get something, determined to get some kind of compromise, partly because there are many people who feel this discussion should have been had not just 1 year ago, maybe 2 years ago, and it's getting a bit late in the day. But we also know, of course, that the Cabinet is deeply divided on all of this. We know that David Davis, the Brexit Secretary, is going to forcefully give his views, his reservations about this plan. And we've heard from other Brexiteers who feel that this proposal does not look or sound like what they would call a true Brexit, that the UK wouldn't be able to take advantage of the opportunities as they see it of being outside of the European Union. But the message from Theresa May is going to be, look, we have to get a compromise. We're going to have to find a way forward here. And actually, if you look at Parliament, the parliamentary arithmetic is not on the side of the Brexiteers at the moment. There is no appetite for no deal. There's no appetite really for a so-called hard Brexit. So we'll see if she gets her way, but she needs at the end of today to have something to put on the table, to take to Brussels, to really kickstart those negotiations again.
Vicky, many thanks. Let's talk to our business correspondent, Jonty Bloom, who's here with me now as well. So, Jonty, just spell out what is in Theresa May's 120-page plan.
Well, what we think is it's a compromise between two previous proposals that have been put to Brussels. It's basically we collect tariffs on behalf of the EU when goods enter the UK, and if they don't go to the rest of the EU, then the companies involved get a rebate. And that will be facilitated by new technology at the borders, computerization, number plate recognition, filling in forms long before any of these goods arrive. And it will also mean accepting rules, EU rules on goods. So everything from cars to computers, including agriculture and food. Basically, if the EU passes a new directive, a new law affecting goods, the British Parliament will basically have to introduce it in the UK so that we maintain a free and frictionless border when it comes to exporting and importing goods into the EU.
And Chauncey, briefly, even if the Cabinet agree, this could be academic if the EU don't agree.
Yes, it's taken 2 years to come up with hopefully a compromise today, which is a proposal which will be put to the EU. The first thing to say is this is a mix of two previous proposals, both of which have been rejected, and also it calls for the separation of the single market. So services would not be involved. And the EU has always made it clear that the single market is a single organisation. You must have free movement of capital, of people, of goods and services. And the UK is saying, we'll take goods, but we're not sure about the rest. That's unlikely to be very popular.
Chauncey, thank you very much. Chauncey Bloom. Police investigators are urgently trying to find the item which was contaminated with a nerve agent that left a couple critically ill in Wiltshire. Officials think the Novichok agent was unlikely to have been left in the open because it would have been degraded by rain and sun, meaning it was probably discovered by the couple in a contained space. Well, our correspondent Duncan Kennedy is in Salisbury for us this lunchtime. Duncan.